to make your first crochet toy? Are you an experienced crocheter who's made tons of garments and blankets but really wants to move into making crochet toys? Or are you just totally new to crochet? Well, either way, there are some things that you should know before you begin. We're going to walk through my do's and don'ts for making crochet toys. Do start simple. We all do it. We get excited about a new project and we have big ideas for what we want to make, and we dive in and it's just a nightmare and we just stop and never try again. Maybe that's just me. You can tell what simple is because it will be simple in terms of shapes and stitches. So it will probably be a toy that looks an awful lot like a blob with a few features. The pattern should be clearly labelled as beginner friendly, and ideally you want to do one that's got some reviews or where you can see a person actually doing it who can verify that it really is beginner friendly. Beginner friendly is a term that entices a lot of people to patterns, so sometimes people use it in error, whether, you know, accidentally or slightly nefariously. So just the way to tell that it's beginner friendly is that there will be a very simple start with a magic circle and then some increases, some decreases, and they will all be even increases and decreases, and maybe a little bit of hand sewing as well. Do remember that small isn't necessarily simple. Some of my crochet designs are really small, but they are not the easiest designs to make, and you can spot the difference. So if you have a look here, some of my crochet key rings are small and they are simple. They're just a ball with a few features. Whereas here are some of my crochet designs that are also small, but you can see that they involve much more complexity to them. And you can just by looking, you can see, okay, so that's got limbs. It's got features that are not just there to be identifying blobs. They're there to sort of raise things. It's got different techniques. So small is not always simple. And in the same vein, big is not easy. Again, your beginner friendly project is probably going to be of a relatively decent size because it's going to be something where the stitches are easy to see and produce. However, it's not always the case that big is easy. There are also some very big crochet toy patterns that have a vast amount of detail, time, and techniques that are required to get just right with just the perfect tension in order for them to look nice. Do read the pattern before you begin. So even if this is the first time that you're making a crochet toy at all, look at that pattern and read it all the way through. Look at all the terms. Make sure every single abbreviation, stitch, and technique is something that you're familiar with how to do. And if any of them are unfamiliar, go and look them up and do a few practice rounds before you start working on that main project. And you can use the same yarn. You don't need to buy a bunch more yarn. Chain a line and then work those stitches back into the chain just to practice them before you begin. And on the same vein, practice magic circles first. Magic circles are one of my favorite things in the world of crochet. They look so complicated and they fox so many people the first time they come across them. But once you know how to do them, it really is magic. It's amazing. It makes a closed circle. And whilst you can create a circle by using a chain and working back into it, there will always be a teeny tiny hole in the middle of there. You can't tighten and adjust it. And it is just so worth the effort of going and following an easy magic circle tutorial. There are some like mine that are just 5 minutes long. Just make a few magic circles, undo them, make them again before you begin. Pick a pattern where the stitch list is short. The shorter the stitch list, the easier the pattern is as a general rule. You want one that has magic circle, single crochet, increase and decrease. And then pretty much that's it for your first one. You're going to make a blob that gets bigger and smaller, working in consecutive rounds all the way up and down to close again. You don't want to have something with irregular rounds and you don't want something which has too many stitches. You just want to focus on getting that shape right, being happy with the tension that you'll need for amigurumi, because it can be a little bit on the tighter side for some people who are used to working with a looser tension. You need a tighter tension for making that shape closed enough that the stuffing's not going to show through. Choose a pattern that looks symmetrical. So you're going to have even rounds and you're going to work concentrically. That's a word? I think it's a word. Pick a pattern where you can work for the first time in Aran or chunky yarn. Now this might be very mildly controversial. There are a lot of strong opinions on which yarns are best for crochet toys. I tend to make my crochet toys in a DK weight yarn, which is slightly lighter, but whenever I help someone to make a crochet toy for the first time, I always get them to choose an Aran or chunky yarn because it is easier to see your stitches and to work those motions. Now if you are an incredibly experienced crocheter who's just not done toys before, don't worry, DK's fine. But if you are newer to crochet or you're feeling insecure about how you're going to transition over to toys, chunky or Aran weight yarn, those are my favourites for getting people started. Now consider that yarn choice carefully. So I am not the biggest fan of plush yarn for beginners. I find because it's got a fine strand with fluff around the edges that it's more tangly, they're more liable to snap it and to find it frustrating to work with. I tend to get beginners to crochet to work either with a cotton silk blend, so it's got nice sturdy structure but it's not too harsh in terms of texture, or a really good quality acrylic yarn, one that doesn't fray when you rub it in your fingers, and one that is relatively cheap to buy as well, because you don't want to invest a huge amount if you're doing something for the first time and you're not sure you're going to love it yet. We're hoping you're going to love it. Size your hook down 0.5 millimeter from what is written on the packet. So you've chosen the yarn that you're going to work with. It's an Aran or chunky yarn. Your hook wants to be 0.5 millimeter smaller than the generic size given on the packet. It's a rule of thumb that I follow that I do find works really well. That slightly smaller hook compared with the type of yarn means that you don't need to be as over ambitious with your tightening of your tension to get nice tight stitches, because they're going to naturally work up slightly tighter than that yarn would intend you to work them. Use an ergonomic hook, a hook that feels comfortable in your hand. If this is your first project, comfort is so important because you don't want to be distracted from your focus on what you're making by discomfort in your hand or wrist. And ergonomic hooks for most people are more comfortable to hold. You'll also find they don't slip out of your hands so easily, and they're a little bit more maneuverable for most of us too. Do mark your stitches, mark those rounds. At the beginning of every single round, stick a stitch marker into that first stitch so you know when you're at the end of the round. Focus and counting is much more relevant, I find, in making toys when you're working in the round than it is when you're working in rows. You don't have that obvious end to a round like you do to a row. Stitch markers make so much difference. And when you lose count, it's the difference between going back infinite levels or individually counting every tiny stitch to just going back to the beginning of that round where you'd marked as well. Make sure you have everything you need before you begin. Set up a nice area for yourself, get your yarn and your hook and your stitch markers and your pattern, and maybe a notepad and a pen as well if you want to write down what's difficult so you can work on it. Make sure everything's in front of you, including scissors, before you begin. And make use of video tutorials. I would say for the first one that you ever make, use a pattern that has a video tutorial that goes along with it. You can then watch what their hands are doing whilst watching what your own hands are doing, and it just makes it that little bit easier to follow along, and there's a little bit more support there as well. Don't use plush yarn for your first project, and definitely don't use novelty yarn. Make this easy on yourself, not harder. Even if you love the texture and feel of plush yarn and that's where you're going when you carry on, fantastic. But for the very first one, please can I recommend just putting it to the side. It's my own bias, but it's often right. Make a magic circle. The chain method leaves a little hole. You want that tight closed circle that you get from your magic circle. Don't overstuff your toy once you've made it. Overstuffing distorts the shape of the toy. I want you to rip off little bits of the stuffing and poke them in a tiny piece at a time, not a big wodge and shove it in, little bits at a time. Keep checking, make sure that you're not overstuffing it. It distorts the shape, and what happens as well is it pulls the stitches apart, and then you can see little bits of stuffing through as well, and it just won't look quite as pretty. In the same vein, don't understuff either. Understuffing also distorts the shape of the toy. It also leads to like inaccurate positioning, so when you sew it together it looks kind of hunched or bent over, or if it's meant to sit up proudly it won't do so. So don't under or overstuff. The correct amount of stuffing is when you pick it up, use my anteater as an example, it should squish but you shouldn't be able to feel your fingers together through it. So squish, but not squish so much that you can feel your other finger at the other side. Don't attempt yarn under if you're a yarn over person the first time you do it. So you've been doing crochet for years, say, and you've been making things like blankets and bags and jumpers and cardigans really happily, and now you want to make some toys, and you've heard that people yarn under when they make toys instead of yarning over. That's a personal preference. I'm a yarn over person. I've tried to yarn under. I just don't love it. I don't feel that the look that you get for a yarn under is personally to my taste any better, and it's just, my fingers don't want to do it. So I'm not doing it. And if you are a person who has been yarning over for a while, just yarn over. Do one new thing at a time. So make the new 3-dimensional shape this time, and then once you're enjoying making toys, you've made a couple maybe, then sure, try having a go with yarn under if that's the thing you want to try. But don't give yourself too many different new things to do the first time you do it. Don't be put off a pattern just because it uses a little bit of hand sewing. I know that there is a culture among some people who crochet to want to avoid at any cost patterns that have a little bit of sewing in them. No-sew patterns are a big thing. I see them around the internet, and that's great. But really, why? I don't know why people are so worried about hand sewing. I'm not a sewer. I don't do sewing as a thing. I'm a crocheter. But the hand sewing, I think it's just a lot simpler than most people think. Follow a couple of little tutorials on how to attach limbs, things like that, making details. But honestly, sewing's just going in and out with a needle, and assuming that you have good dexterity in your hands. Don't be put off a beginner pattern just because it has a little bit of hand sewing in it. I promise it will be fine. Don't rush. Don't go, oh, I have to get this done. It says you can do it in an hour. That's their hour. Your time that you need to do something and a new thing, it will take as long as it takes. Take breaks, stop, make a mark about where you've got to in the pattern, but take your time, don't rush. It's not a race. And finally, don't be afraid to ask for help. If it goes wrong, there are a lot of people in real life, hopefully, if you're lucky, but also all over the internet, and we're happy to help. We're happy to give advice. We're happy for you to show us photos of how you're getting along and then see if we can give you a hand. Particularly if you buy a pattern that says it's a beginner-friendly first pattern kind of pattern and you have trouble with it, email the person who made the pattern. Most of us are really, really happy to help when you're struggling. And likewise, if you're making your first crochet toy and you've got any questions at all, just drop them in the comments section under this video and I'll do my very best to help you out. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Please tell me, what was the first crochet toy you ever made? Are you trying to get up the courage to make that first crochet toy? Are you excited, nervous, apprehensive, angry? What's going on? Tell me all about it. I'd love to hear about your experience. I'd love to hear what you're looking forward to about crochet toys. And yeah, let's chat in the comments section below and I'll see you there, and happy crocheting.